Wow, that was gosh, there were so many good things you talked about. I really liked.
How was it? Right?
Excellent. Just excellent.
Not too much. There's so much knowledge I have. It's so hard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all kinds of good
We
information
should
there.
meet again. We should meet again.
Mm-hmm.
it's fascinating to hear that the sexual intercourse, I guess, or the frequency kind of drops off after the first 2 years of marriage.
Yeah, it really is a big problem. Many people think it's after the birth of their first child. No, it happens really, really early and it sets the tone for the rest of the relationship. It's really hard to get out of. It's because people can't find their sexual style. There's this thing called limerence, which is the first 6 months to 2 years, if you're really lucky, where sex is like easy in a relationship and fun. And then you really have to work to find a good sexual style, a good routine, to have sex be still a central part in your relationship.
Well, as you're talking about it earlier, what popped in my head was you were talking about connection, and connection really is where it starts. Like, it doesn't start in the bedroom; it has to start earlier in the day, or at some point where you're making a bid for connection and you're connecting, and that will lead up to a better, or at least better sexual encounter later. You mentioned, I guess one of the issues that popped in my head was, what about couples who have, like you said, the men usually wake up and they're kind of ready to go because that's when testosterone resets. And for women, it's a different. Their cycle is longer. How do you help people maybe kind of match their frequency or wavelength when it comes to wanting to be intimate?
It's a really good question. I think you have to have a conversation with your partner of like, when do they feel the most sexually desired? Also, sometimes you have to also focus on, some people have a longer sexual, they want to be pursued further. So like they want to be able to, like women specifically, they want to go on a date and that's the way they feel connected. And then they're able to like feel sexual afterwards, or they need some sort of connection before. It's just about like talking about it and like, hey, like I want to have a little bit more sex during the week. Okay, well, let's plan it. Like, when can we do that? Like, what's a good time for you?
Yeah, I've heard that scheduling is something that people usually kind of balk at, but then when they actually do it, it really becomes a great thing. And you had mentioned safety, and you mentioned it earlier, and this is something I've learned, is that when a woman feels safe, that's like the
Oh,
first
yeah.
thing they have to feel before
Yeah.
they'll even consider wanting to be intimate. And I thought that was interesting because it's so different for men. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I think safety is really important because if you are not free to say no, you cannot freely say yes. Um, and if you're able to say no and your partner's like, okay, but if your partner's like, oh, like if you say no or like, oh, like you immediately recoil and you don't feel safe to say no to that person because that other person had some sort of negative reaction to your no. So being able to hear no, be okay with no, and thank that person for their no creates more safety to engage fully. Like when women feel safe and they feel wanted by their partner and they feel taken care of by their partner. Like, I had a client one time and she came in and she felt the most desire when she came in after a long day at work and her husband had made her favorite chicken and the house was clean and she was like, oh my God, I want that man because he saw her.
That would do it. That would do it.
Well, that reveals too that safety for women is different than safety is for men. And Liz, I think you mentioned this one time. You went to a convention where the speaker asked the women to, hey, when's the last time you actually feared for your life? And the women were like, just on the walk in here, you're in the parking garage. And the men, when did you feel fear for your life? I don't know, like 6 months ago when I was hunting bear. It's safety is a completely different thing for men and women. I think that's probably where I think men and women get confused a lot. Do you help your couples to kind of recognize that safety is different?
Yeah, I think a lot of men don't understand the female experience. I also think women don't understand the male experience either. Like I'm a runner and I run in the middle of the day because it is, people honk at me, people scream at me, and it is not a safe place for women in this world. Like women are preyed on and like, like women feel that on a day to day. But when you have a man that is protecting you and seeing you and knowing that those things happen, like if you just see your partner and understand them, that's all we really want. We want to be heard and seen and understood.
Wow. Yeah. Rewinding a little bit, I thought this was interesting when we were first talking just before we hit record, and you got into this a little bit in the show, was that usually porn addiction or people who watch it it's a coping mechanism for another issue. And I thought that was fascinating. How do you get people to recognize that and then maybe trace the issue and help cope better?
Well, we go deeper. Like, I know I ask questions, of course, about the out of control sexual behavior. When did it start? It started when after my mom died. Oh, wait, let's talk a little bit more about that. Like, when do you usually start watching porn? Oh, like when I feel bored. Oh, is it when like you don't have anything to do? Yeah. Do you feel lonely during that time? Do you feel sad during that time? Do you feel grief during that time? Oh yeah, I do feel grief during that time. And then I go and watch porn. Oh, interesting. So you're watching porn and maybe not feeling the feelings that are coming up. Interesting.
That's interesting because it ties it to emotional intelligence, in a sense where I think for men, especially from my own experience, I remember learning about, oh, okay, I'm mad. Why am I mad? Can I trace it back to? Or how do I feel lonely? And just learning, okay, I have feelings. Where are they coming from? What happens? And that just unlocked a lot for me. I think men are generally just culturally, we're like, oh no, you repress your feelings. You don't cry. You don't get upset and you're just angry.
It's such a courageous thing to do, to be able to trace back your feeling and say, okay, where is this block? Where is this armor coming from? Like that anger and that the madness it's armor. And then the courage to go beneath the armor and figure out, okay, wait, I'm actually feeling really embarrassed. And like share that. That vulnerability is such courage.
Yeah, it is. And it helps when you're interacting with somebody realizing, oh, okay, this is what's bothering me. And then you don't have to get angry. You can actually deal with the issue. And it's more masculine if a man can do that.
Yes, it is. It is.
Are there common, like you were mentioning somebody feeling lonely, are there any common what do you call them, morbidity or issues? Are there any common ones?
I would say the biggest comorbidity with out of control sexual behavior is OCD. And OCD is widely misunderstood. OCD is usually loops of things where you do something to a huge extreme and you feel like you really can't stop it. So like some people who have OCD will have loops of porn addiction, smoking, drinking, exercising. And it's just the loop that they're kind of in it. And it varies based on the person. And you really cannot stop with a gun to your head. If you cannot stop that behavior with a gun to your head and you feel so out of control, it's OCD. And a lot of people get mad at me for saying this, but if you have OCD, you need to get medication because it is very hard to stop OCD without medication. People are always like, why do you like, I don't push medication. I don't like medication. But in some instances, OCD just takes over and hijacks your mind to the point where you feel so out of control. You can't stop something with a gun to your head. You probably need medication.
Wow. That is, it's fascinating to hear that connection that I'm sure a lot of people are not recognizing. But after hearing that, they're gonna be like, you know what? Yeah, that, and just hopefully this will help people get the help that they need to. And I find that fascinating that the approach you take to this issue. Do you know how that developed, or any of the history to how that developed?
Like the research around the out of control sexual behavior. There was a research group that did research a couple of years ago and found that it was comorbidity with out of control sexual behaviors. I don't know who the researchers were, probably in Kinsley Institute. They're big. And when that research article came out, it made so much sense. Because it was always a mechanism. Like anger is a secondary emotion. And I think porn addiction, I conceptualize the same way. So like, this is the top level. This is the iceberg. This is what the behavior you're seeing. There's all of this below.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you talk about media and movies really misinform our sexual expectations. and performance expectations. And it's just so true because sex and marriage is a completely different thing than what they show in movies and other places. And that was interesting that there's other outlets for that you mentioned where this is more realistic.
Yeah. They do that a lot. Even with relational stuff, one of my biggest pet peeves I think shows show is that when a woman gets upset and then she retreats, like the man chases her, that is not what happens in real life. Men are not going to chase a woman when they're mad. They're going to let that woman go and be mad, but then the woman is now mad that her husband didn't chase her because she's mad, and she's like, well, why isn't he chasing me? It's like, oh, like, of course he doesn't want to chase me because you're upset and he doesn't want to engage and like be yelled at when you go and chase her. But they do the same thing for sex, and it's so annoying.
Yeah. It really distorts all of that stuff and it makes it meaningless. There was a really good book I read called A Guide to Sex in the 21st Century by Louise Perry. Have you heard of her? Oh, I'd highly recommend that book.
Okay.
Really good. And just remember the author, Louise Perry. She's got a lot of good stuff online too, a lot of podcasts and videos. Her background was interesting and where she's come is just fascinating. But one of the things she talks about, I thought, was how a lot of the media just makes sex meaningless now. And it's killing it.
I think there's two extremes. And like I live in an extreme in Miami where like OnlyFans, like you go outside and you're going to see someone's bare butt. Like I go get a coffee and I'm seeing like butts, like just naked people everywhere. And it almost like there's less function around, like, cause it's so in your face and it's everywhere. But then on the other side, like people don't talk about sex. People are having sex and they're not, like, it's this taboo thing. So I feel like there's two very big extremes and there's nowhere in the middle where we're having talks about healthy sexuality and what your partner likes, what they like, and frequency.
Yeah, there's like two separate islands. There's no bridge to a third island where you got crazy disorder on either side and you need some order in the middle that can help and actually improve the problem. Yeah, I remember I lived in Jacksonville for a long time, and I remember going down to Miami for, I'd grown up in Fort Lauderdale when I was younger, but I hadn't been there in like 15 years. And I remember going down and going to see some seminar with a cinematography thing and hitting the beach just for lunch and being like, what is going on here? I don't remember this when I was a kid, but there were topless beaches and stuff, and it was wild.
Miami Beach is topless. Yeah. You can go topless. I mean, you go outside and like people are basically naked on the street.
Yeah, different world. Different world. Different than the one I grew up in. This has been such a fascinating topic, and you revealed some things in here that I haven't heard, and I think are really going to be helpful for the audience. Like, I think you said the average couple have sex 59 to 62 times a year. And that works out to like maybe twice a week or 1.5 times a week.
Yeah, some weeks 1.5 times. Yeah.
Yeah. So that people can at least have a starting point to figure out, okay, are we too much? Are we too little? Like, what do we do?
Also, there's this thing called good enough sex. Is like, is your sex like good enough? Like, you might think you want to have more sex, and then you put pressure on like, oh, I should be having more sex. I should be having more sex. But is your sex good enough? Like, is it good enough?
Oh, yeah. You could confuse the frequency with the quality.
Another big thing. People go all focused on frequency. And I don't like that. I would rather go to a restaurant that is freaking delicious. The service is fantastic. I'm having 3 courses. I'm coming out of there completely full and satisfied than McDonald's 7 days a week.
Yeah, I have an ice cream every day.
McDonald's good sometimes, but frequency I focus less on than quality. Quality is really important.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. That is, gosh, I'm almost at a loss for words. Yeah, that's such a poignant way of putting it. And that I think that is a trap a lot of people fall into is the frequency versus the quality. And it really does start with connection so early and safety. And I like Dave mentions this all the time, safety, satisfaction, and connection. And I like the order that's in, because I think that's precisely the order it needs to happen in.
100%. He killed that.
Yeah.
Like, nailed it.
Yeah. Well, Vanessa, this has been incredible. I could talk to you another few hours. We're going to have you back.
I love it. I have the best job in the world. Literally the best job in the world. I could talk about this all day for the next 10, 20 years. Well, I love it.
Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa.
Of course.
So lovely.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Live and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.